హలో మిమ్మల్నే యోయో టీవీ యాప్ డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకున్నారా? ఇంకా లేదా? మీ యాప్ స్టోర్ కి వెళ్ళి వెంటనే డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకోండి.
మరణం కరుణ మిలనం మధురం స్మరణం కరుణం కాలవశాదిహ सकलं करुणं समयाद्धिपते अखिलं करुणं. Namaskaram, good evening to everyone.
It's challenging. Sadhguru, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and thanks to all the volunteers who've worked so hard. So my first question to you is that when I first heard about you many years ago, I rolled my eyes and and I muttered something about guru types. And until few months ago, when my sister gave me your book, Inner Engineering, which happens to be New York Times bestseller, it changed my perspective. And when I was working on this interaction, I came across few interviews of yours, one of them being with a senior writer from my field, and he was vehemently attacking you, like he was trying to frame you for being fake, and he himself is accused of plagiarism. So my question is that why does a person connected to spirituality on its path is everyone feels entitled to judge them? And honestly, if it wasn't New York Times bestseller book, I would have not read it. What is it about the West, this West stamp that we can't do without it? I mean, there are so many books, and unless Americans don't approve of it, it just doesn't make sense. Why is that?
This is multiple questions. About people's resistance to someone like me. When I say someone like me, someone who has not messed with himself, okay? He didn't cut his hair, he didn't do anything, he's simply the way nature intended him to be. That's all the problem they have with me. They think you have to belong somewhere. You have to be this religion or that religion or this party or that party. You got to be something. Today, if you look at the world, now that you mentioned America, and it's also beginning to happen in our country in a big way, in imitation of United States, I would say. See, in United States, you talk to anybody, they'll say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. What this essentially means is, you have no clue what is democracy. If you say, I'm this, and my father also was this, and my grandfather also was a Republican, so this I am. What this means is, you have become a tribe.
You've become
a tribe, you know? Once you become a tribe, a tribal war is inevitable. It's gonna happen somewhere. Democracy means every time you must see these 5 years or 4 years, whatever the term, how they have functioned, and individually you make a choice whom to vote for. You already committed to vote to a particular party no matter what. This means you become a tribe. You've gone back to feudalistic way of living. but you're talking democratic language. So this has happened in a huge way in United States. So these jokes keep going around. Someone trying to convert a Republican into a Democrat. So they came and asked, why don't you vote for Democrats? See what kind of president you got. So he said, no, I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican, my father was a Republican, and my grandfather was a Republican. So I'm a Republican, that's it. So this guy asked, suppose your grandfather was a jackass and your father was a jackass, what would you be? He said, of course, a Democrat.
Okay.
So, we are taking things from there all the time, and in India also slowly we are moving in that direction, unfortunately. About New York Times New York Times a lot of things you could say about New York Times, but I think their president is speaking as to what is New York Times, I don't have to say a thing. We still have not got out of the Firang syndrome. You know what's Firang?
I know.
Yeah.
Of course.
So we've still not gotten out of that Firang syndrome, it has to come from there. Today, why do you think so many people are talking about yoga? The yoga they're talking about in India is largely a rebound from the American coast. They're not talking about the yoga that is here. This is the source of yoga. And people's understanding of yoga is…
Sadhguru, that brings to me a question about our roots ingrained in yoga and spirituality. But where has it got us as a nation, as a country, as a continent? What has it given us? Like, I know what you say about karma bondage, and I will quote you. No, I'll quote you. If somebody… he says about karma, breaking karma bondage, that if somebody breaks your leg, don't go after that person's leg. Fix your leg and go your way. I understand, that sounds fantastic. But if somebody breaks your leg and you go your way, somebody again comes, break your leg, what do you do? And then
Why
others
do you think
see…
people are so much interested in your legs?
No, Sadhguru, you're literally taking it, but tell me, don't we have a history of 1,000 years of
Yes.
invasion after invasion, and didn't we grew up hearing this from our mothers that, oh, if somebody rubs you wrong way, the only thing that they say is, oh, Bhagwan dekh raha hai. What? So,
Say this,
I mean, we as a land, I mean, I don't know much about history, but this much I know that we as a land, we have not, and thanks to our spiritual education, that we have never gone to invade a continent or gone for a conquest like that. But where has it got us? Where has it landed us? So why not imitate West?
Okay. You must give me a few minutes.
Okay.
Because you raised a whole lot of things about history. So what has the spiritual process given us as a land, as a nation, as a culture? You must understand this. Let's understand this very clearly. Here we always focused on individual development. Because without creating great human beings, there is no great nation, there is no great culture, there is no great world. World, nation, society, these are just words. It's just you and me. What kind of people we are, that's the kind of society, that's the kind of nation, that's the kind of world we will live in. So we always focused on individual development. In this, we produce stellar human beings, absolutely fantastic human beings for thousands of years, who created a fantastic culture. And let me remind you, our safety was our geographical features. The Himalayan region, the Himalayan ranges, and the Indian Ocean, which was called as Hindu Sagara at one time. So this he and Hindu, together we made it Hindu. So you must understand, it is a geographical entity. We revered the mountains and the ocean because we knew our safety, our well-being and our cultural flourish and our economic prosperity of the time, everything depended on these two barriers which stopped people from invading and doing things. But then people found ways to cross the mountains and come across and come through the oceans, everything happened. So our problem was just this, we focused on human genius all the time, but we lacked organization. The West always focused on organization, but they did not focus on individual genius. For both there is a price. So now we have come to a place where we cannot ignore individual genius, we have to focus on that. At the same time, we need to learn to organize. That's what we are struggling at right now, that we want to organize.
Can I ask? So, Sadhguru, talking about spirituality, and like I question that, how practical is it in today's world, whereas like the whole philosophy of spirituality, or what…
No, spirituality is not a philosophy.
I know, it's a technique, it's a practice, which
No,
I also do. It's yoga.
No.
It's yoga, it's the ultimate union. Okay, so I know yoga is the ultimate union, and everything that we do as yoga is supposed to make us inclusive. Inclusive of everything. So let me finish, okay? So it is supposed to make us inclusive of our environment, and then further expanding that our country, our countrymen, and then the planet, and then the cosmos, and that it goes on. But my question is, and I want to present an example. I was in London, and you know what happens to when you are in a beautiful city with great infrastructure, you're with a couple of friends, and your Indian friends, they're always cursing India. You know, oh, this is so great, where we live is a piece of garbage. You know, and on all that, I felt so overwhelmed. I couldn't wait to get to my room, and when I got there, I was crying. I found myself crying, and I was muttering something of the effect that, you know, I mean, what do you expect, and you know, why don't they have sympathy for their own land and all of that? And then I realized that identifying like that with your country, today I'm crying, tomorrow I might just punch somebody, and everybody will behave in their own way. So this kind of identification with your environment, with your country, with your religion, with your family is the root cause of all atrocities. So isn't that kind of, isn't it dangerous? Now don't tell me be inclusive, but still not be inclusive.
Don't try to answer for
no.
me.
I am not buying that answer. How can you be inclusive and yet not be inclusive? If you're inclusive, you're inclusive. Or you don't be inclusive.
Well, the city that you're appreciating of its infrastructure and its wealth and well-being, for 2 centuries was largely built on stolen money from this country. Well, we should not resent our history and develop animosity towards somebody, but at the same time, it's stupid to forget everything and go on as if nothing happened. That'll be absolutely stupid. That's a problem with us. One thing is, see, in this country, what has happened in those 200 years? Don't go back 1,000 years, there have been atrocities, that's a different matter. Even if you go back this 200 years, because we're talking about London, what's happened in this country is not a small thing. 6 million Jews died. They write and write and write about it, they make movies about it. Nobody is supposed to forget about it in the world, everybody is reminded every day how this atrocity happened to them. But you know, the Bengal famine killed over 3.5 million people in a matter of 3 months because they took away all the food for the World War II effort. And this is not one. The governor in 1860 writes, "The fields of India are bleached by the bones of the hand weavers because they destroyed the handloom industry." Yesterday was handloom day or something, yes? From 1800 to 1860, in 60 years' time, an industry which has lasted for 10,000 years, they destroyed and left millions of people to die. It's recorded in British history, and you know, in what they have written, not what we have written, because we write nothing. If we get our breakfast tomorrow, we're just happy. There's a big problem in India because we don't have a sense of history.
History or revenge?
No, revenge is not needed because revenge will again waste your energy and your future is wasted if you go into revenge.
Sadhguru, this is what I don't get.
Now, let me finish this. About what is this spiritual process given to us, okay? The question is, why can't we be like them and be successful? See, why we are like this is because we have realized in a very profound way, most Indian people may not know this consciously, but they know this by life. They may not be articulating this in their mind. Somewhere they know that their well-being is essentially coming from within. Outside arrangements we can make as we want, but me being joyful, peaceful, loving, blissful is most important. Well, that's why I said individually we did great, organization also we had great stuff, till outside people came who had no concern about anything that you think and feel and experience, everything was brutally uprooted, all right? I'll just tell you an example. For example, you've come to the yoga center, that region, there's one police station with about 12 to 14 policemen. About 4 are on night duty, that means about 8 or 9. 2, 3 will be always on leave. I'm saying literally there's no law, it's 250,000 people. There's literally no law at all, but still there's no crime. This is spiritual process, I'm telling you. You take away police in New York City, you take away the law enforcement in New York City or London that you're talking about, just see what will happen in 3 hours' time.
Okay, so Sadhguru, this…
We need organization right now. To succeed as a nation, we need organization.
Yeah, but the way society has also been handling things is not great. It's not really the best thing. It's not we can't rely on a system like that. You mean like we are largely being organized by society, but that's not the most appropriate way. I mean, authority isn't either, but aren't there is at least a set of rules there. With society, they're really, I mean, more money you've got, you can literally get away with anything. So that's not the best way to go forward. What do you have to say about that?
Here? You're saying in India?
In India, yes.
Yes. See, we need to understand this. When the British left this country, the average life expectancy in this country was 28 years, okay? The illiteracy was 93%. There was literally no industry, no infrastructure of any kind. People, some idiots talk about, oh, they built railways. They built railways because they want to move their troops and the goods out of the country. So railways were there, but what were they transporting on the railways? So there was literally no economic infrastructure. Administrative infrastructure in the form of civil services was there, that was to keep control. You just see what they were called. What were the local administrators called? They were called collectors. Even today, unfortunately, we're retaining the same appellation. Collector means what? They were just tax collectors. In many provinces, the taxes on the agricultural produce was 100%. Can you beat that?
Oh.
100% tax on everything that you grow. So this was a totally, absolutely demoralizing occupation that happened for over 200 years. And we are recovering from that. It's not a small thing.
I agree.
We've been just beaten down, no education, no nourishment, no economic infrastructure, all industry destroyed, we were just a resource for their industry. When this was done systematically, we've been exploited. Only problem with us was we didn't have an organization to fight them. We had small kingdoms which they played very well and they managed. This is a historical blunder on our side, there's no point cursing them. They did what was best for them, we could not do what was best for us. It's time for us to do what is best for us now.
But Sadhguru, tell me, like we have such a diversity in our country, you know, whether they are different languages, traditions, religions and food and all sort of diversity.
Definitely food.
Which is beautiful, like what you say about difference and discrimination. Differences are beautiful, you know, like how like a man is different than a woman and flowers are different and you know, so on and so forth. So there is difference which is beautiful, but don't you think there should be one spirit? There should be something that could bind us together? I don't see anything, because the only common factor between us is definitely the motherland, because you're from South and I'm from North, and if we didn't have the history of slavery to connect us, we would never know what we're talking about.
We are very balanced because we are from the sea level.
Yeah, his nickname for me is mental. He calls me cuckoo. Yeah, so Sadhguru, don't you think we should have something that can bind us together? Don't you think it's so easy to play us as people, as a nation, and that spirit of, like, I can think of only one thing that can bind us together is probably nationalism, which is the most infamous word in today's time. So what is it? What can bind us together?
See, this diversity that you're talking about, as all of us know, there is no other nation which has this complexity of diversity. We have 1,300 spoken languages in this country, and 1,000 different ways to cook, and 1,000 different ways to dress, and every 50 kilometers you drive, people look different, dress different, speak different, eat different, everything different. So, this is what also helped us to survive. You must understand this. See, just look at this. Wherever the English went, for example, or before that, the Islamic invasions, wherever they went, they made sure the entire population was religiously at least compromised. Just look at North America, South America, Africa, Australia, wherever they went, they were absolutely nearly 100% successful. This is one country they couldn't figure out because they don't know where the head is.
So…
Because we are an organism with, million heads, nobody knows which head to cut. So don't complain about this, because this has also been our survival. After nearly 1,000 years of occupation, we've still retained our culture, maybe little bit of distortions here, there, but we've still retained it simply because nobody knows where the head is, otherwise they would have chopped off the head.
So where's the head?
Huh? No, that is the whole thing. You tell me, this whole thing now is leading to something else. Right now there's a huge cosmos. In this, we are a tiny little planet, yes?
Yeah.
Now, the foolish way of looking at life is that there is a head for this cosmos, there is one God sitting up there and ruling this cosmos. This is a childish way of looking at life. But that's not the way we looked at it here. We saw every organism, every life, every atom has its own head and it's running by itself. It is complete by itself, it runs by itself. This is why in this culture, self-realization became most important, because if you realize the nature of this, in a way you have realized the nature of the entire cosmos, because this idea that there is some central point in the cosmos and there is one head sitting up there is a stupid idea. Modern science is proving that to you beyond any doubt, but we have said this for thousands of years because we saw this is a headless cosmos. Headless is not a negative thing. I know the Western saying headless chicken is supposed to be bad. Yes, a chicken should have a head. It should also have two legs. It's important. But this is a headless cosmos, that is why it's so beautiful. So we are just an imitation of the cosmic nature of existence. We are also always headless. But this is why individual genius becomes of paramount importance, because each human being functioning at their peak is important to create a society which is as colorful and as diverse as possible. So what held us together? See, because you must understand this, there was a time when there were over 200 political entities in the form of kingdoms and empires and whatever. Many times people try to, unite them into one occupation, but later on it again broke up. Many times over 200 political establishments. In spite of that, in this nation people felt this is one nation, we call this Bharat, and people from outside, they also thought this is one nation, though there were 200 kings ruling the place. What is it? What do you think made them think this is one nation? Even today, if you go to Syria, Lebanon, you will see thousands of women especially named as Hind. They're named as India. Their understanding is Hind means India, And they have taken the name Hind. Even today, thousands of women have this name that they are Hind. So, because forever we've been known as one nation, for more than 10,000–15,000 years.
That's so good.
This is because everywhere they went, they saw a nation was always built on the sameness of language, sameness of religion, sameness of ethnicity. But they found this land, there is no sameness anywhere. If you look from your neighbor to you, you are a different person, absolutely. You cook differently, they cook differently, you speak one language, they speak another language. But they called this one nation because this was the only nation which was a land of seekers, not a land of believers. This is why we have always identified as seekers. We are seekers of truth and liberation. Our highest value is not God. God means head. Our highest value has never been God. Our highest value has always been mukti and moksha because this means liberation and freedom. Freedom has been our highest value. Now the so-called liberals are talking about freedom fresh as if they're talking about it for the first time. We've always held as the most sacred thing in our life is ultimate liberation of the human being. Not going to heaven, not the pleasures of heaven have never been eulogized in this culture. So our togetherness came because we were seekers. When we were seekers, the important thing about seeking is this: when you are believers, you will always get together. Because without getting together… See, if you just believe something all by yourself, you look stupid. You need 1,000 people around you who believe the same thing, otherwise you'll feel foolish. But when you become a seeker, you always want to be alone, because seeking is internal and individual. So because we were always individuals, we were never an organized group, we never had a situation where somebody could give us one riprap speech and get us all moving. There's never been like that. Still we are like that, I'm glad we are like that, but we need some organization to function in the modern world for sure.
No, that's a contradiction.
It is not.
Well, okay, Sadhguru, I personally feel that this whole dichotomy of what's happening in today's society and today's world, that we are individuals and we need to be organized as well, but what we face on on daily basis, is something completely different, which, I mean, I'll tell you where, for me, like, it's very conflicting, because, like, I'm working on a martyrs biopic where there is a scene that the protagonist, Lakshmibai, she goes and she saves a calf. So my crew had a huge discussion. We halted the shoot and we were like, she can't save a calf. It has to be a lamb, because we don't want to look like cow savers. So my point is that when such a prejudice strikes, as a person, you feel very protective of who you are and what your values are, and you want to save all the animals. Why just cow? But you definitely want to save the cow for sure, because the prejudice is really agonizing. But a cow lynching lynching for cow takes place, and you look like an idiot. And then you jump to the other side, which has been always criticizing and never wanting to be protecting cows. And you're like, these people look sensible, and these are so-called liberals. And now liberals, by definition, because I've learned English now just recently, so I have to access to dictionary for everything. So by the literal meaning, dictionary meaning of liberal is people who have acceptance for people, opinions, thoughts.
No, they're fanatics.
No, that's what I'm saying. Now, Rakul, let me finish this question. So these liberals, they will not take you in their group unless you hate the same people as they do. So one thing, it's fine if this is for the betterment of the country. You don't mind hating on BJP. You don't mind believing that everything that is being done by, like literally Amit Shah is practically doing. That's fine. But what is… No, but what I don't get is, this I get. What I don't get is, what is their agenda and plan of action for bringing this country out of the pit. What is that they're doing? So when a war breaks, liberals are the first one to say, from my industry, people say, why should we be bothered with war? We are artists. To demotivating an army man who's protecting the borders for you. A rape takes place in Kashmir and they say, Hindustan raped our daughter. To be pointing fingers at each other when the country is so vulnerable and trying to break a civil war? Is that what liberals do? And you're like, wait a minute, the most sensible thing seems like to be a skeptic. But a skeptic is nothing but a space cadet. Doesn't know where he's going. So right now, we need a definite direction to go into. We cannot be stuck in the unfortunate loop of to be or not to be, to be or not to be. So what to do?
Wow. Well, for a long time, from that city that you were talking about, they always thought asking this question, to be or not to be, is the most intelligent thing to do. There. Because they rarely came to existential questions. Existential questions is a daily affair for us in this country, but they rarely came to it. So that is how rudimentary ways they addressed it. They thought it's the most intelligent question to ask, to be or not to be. I think it's the dumbest question to ask, because you have not tasted life. When you are really blissed out and ecstatic, do you ask to be or not to be? In some way you're frustrated, some way you're burdened, so you're asking to be or not to be. Leave that aside, that's the thing. First of all, today in the world, people who claim to be liberals are actually fanatics. If you do not agree with them, they'll finish you in some way. So, about Jhansi Rani saving the cow. Well, she is a woman who stands out in our history, and you're just fortunate that you…
But she did save a cow. I'm like, listen guys, rather than fighting, why don't you access the facts? They're like, she did save a cow, but we should not show it as a cow.
The thing is, we don't know who wrote the story. She didn't save one cow. Cows would have always been saved because in this country, which is a pastoral country, cow and cattle was the wealth of this nation. If you look back at Mahabharata, they're not talking about land as wealth. They're always talking about cattle as wealth, because land was there plenty. Cattle, how many thousand head of cattle did you own, decided how rich you are. So if somebody stole a cow, they caught you and beat you up, all right?
Yeah, that's how it is in back home as well. Like, I come from a village and sometimes the only thing that they have is…
So, this whole lynching debate that's going on in the country, these people who are talking about it have not seen India. They've not seen India at all. They're just living in cities and television studios and endlessly talking about these things. Let me say this clearly. I've always been connected with rural life. In my life, I have witnessed 3 lynchings. Okay, I witnessed. In 2, they were killed, in the other one, nearly killed. For what? One was because they believed this man could be stealing their children. People lynch, even recently it happened. If you steal their children, if you steal their cows, if you cut a tree and take it from his farm, these are 3 things for lynchings will happen. I have seen all 3 varieties. I tried to get into it and stop this. They said, you don't get into it, and push me aside. I knew the local sub-inspector who was a senior in my college. So I went to him and said, you need to do something. These guys just killed a guy and buried him right there in the village. The entire village knows, and nothing. He said, you don't get into this. I said, why? He said, see, this is how it is. They have their own law. I am a police officer, I enforce a certain aspect of the law. Rest of the law is handled by them in their own terms. So actually, this is a crowd, because there is no actual total law enforcement in the country. Slowly it is coming, but it has not been there for a long time. People manage their own things.
But Sadhguru, there's a lot of other atrocities, like for example…
No, there are. But let me finish this, because this is a big issue in the country today. So I'm not trying to prove this is the way to do it. All I'm saying is when mob tries to enforce justice, their idea of justice, this is how it gets enforced. Unfortunately, that's where we are. We need to understand that's where we are. If we want to change this, there are many things we need to do, not going on pointing about somebody saved a cow. Well, when people thought they're child lifters and they killed them, why did you start a debate about that? Because you know if you start a debate about don't save your children, then you will get it back, all right? Cow is an easy thing right now to go at. So this is not about cows, this is not about… whatever is precious to them. If they believe somebody is taking it, they can't call the police. Because if they call the police, they'll come after 24 hours. And if they come, there are so many issues. It doesn't directly get settled. So people have their own way of settling. Unfortunately, it is going into a place where people are being killed on the street. It should not go there means law enforcement needs to come on all levels of life. We have not… law enforcement has not reached the entire geography of this nation. Let's get to that. We need to do that.
Sadhguru, like, I am a Rajput myself, and when the whole Padmavat episode took place and, cutting one of my contemporaries' nose, I was embarrassed. I'm like… and also, like, when the rape took place in Kashmir, to be pointing out things like,
This wouldn't disturb anybody if it was Hollywood. Because a lot of them have cut their noses off and replaced.
But the criminals are not
Yes,
religions. Criminals cannot be associated with religion. That is just simply trying to
I don't think
instigate…
that was about religion at all. Anyway, that whole movement was not against religion. There are many political aspects to it. When this was happening in full flare, the Padmavat issue, and Prasun is here, so, when they were burning buses, then I called somebody, a very responsible person in the country, and said, what is this? How are we allowing this to happen? If you don't like a movie, don't go. I don't go to the movies. So, if you don't like it, you don't go. Why do you have to burn a bus that people have to use tomorrow morning? They said, Sadhguru, they have all dressed up 100 women like brides and they're sitting ready to burn by themselves. Volunteers to burn. Today, if we handle them rough on the street, tomorrow if these 100 women, even if 10 of them burn themselves, it'll become an international issue. So let the buses burn for 1 or 2 days, then we will deal with it. I thought this is a strange kind of wisdom, but it is wisdom.
Okay.
So we need to understand this, instead of giving commentaries because somebody went to Western universities and came back giving that kind of commentary in this country without understanding the realities. No. There are unfortunate realities of various kinds of divisions that people are trying to play up. When they don't get any voice to say something, they will gather one caste together, they will gather one community together or gather one group of language people together or religion together and do something on the street to get attention. The unfortunate way that this become a culture to get attention is burn the bus. People, tomorrow morning they'll have to walk to their place of work, but burn the bus and get attention. In every other country, if they want to protest, they burn old tires. I think our people don't know how to take the tires out, so they're burning the entire bus. It's a mechanical lapse.
Okay, Sadhguru, Indians are doing so well, whether it's the CEOs of Google, Microsoft, MasterCard, Nokia, the list goes on. All the chief executive, I have a whole list of those.
Pepsi is out, okay.
Yeah, so Indians are doing so well all over the world, but India is not doing well. Why is that?
Everybody in the world thinks India is doing very well, but here there is a commentary that India is not doing well. When I look at you, I see you're doing well. When I look at these people, I see they're doing well. But yes, it is a fact 40% of our population is still malnourished, unfortunately. This is because our focus in these last 70 years has largely been to industrialize, build cities and stuff. We have not focused sufficiently on our agriculture, enhancing rural life. Right now, we are pitching very hard to do this, and I think in many ways, the governments of today, particularly the central government, is very focused on seeing this happen. Well, it's not as easy as said, there are many challenges, but a clear plan at least is being evolved, how to make agriculture lucrative, how to make rural living in a village worthwhile, that even if you want to see a cinema, you don't have to go to the city, that living in a village should be worthwhile. So these things are being planned. In some states it's going very fast, in some states it's going slow, but right now the focus is how to make it worthwhile living in a village, that you don't have to… If you want to have a good life, you have to go to the city. This is how it's been in the last 50, 60 years. This, the government is trying to change. All of us should support this movement towards developing villages. If we need to forego a few things in the cities for some time, we should, and allow the villages to develop. Otherwise, you'll have all of them coming to the city. That's the biggest problem in Mumbai. People are just coming in without any infrastructure, they don't know where to be. In most inhuman ways, unfortunately, they're existing because they just come in without any basis. And the life that they go through, the exploitations that they go through, what happens to them is an untold story.
But Sadhguru, don't you think population explosion, like China was also facing a similar problem a few years ago and they have tackled it so well, and with us…
Don't say well, they've handled it. Because you should know in China…
No, I don't know.
They were burying live children. Second child born, live children were just being buried in the hospitals. When that video was taken and it went viral around the world, they changed that to giving iodine injections to the brains of healthy children, second child. So you don't have the stomach nor the heart to do anything like that, so don't compare to China. But do we have to control our population? Absolutely.
So at least there should be tax on the third child?
What is that?
At least there should be tax on the third child, because they're using roads and river water which you're trying to save, and the oxygen from the trees which I am planting with many other people. So at least two children should be okay, but third one should have tax.
Don't say that because I'm the fourth among the siblings. I have a big tax sitting on my head. Definitely some incentives have to be done. Right now, when I spoke about this a year ago, there was a lot of controversy in the south. We've been trying to bring this in the villages. A voluntary year of no conception. All we need to do is, because our life expectancy has improved, it's not because an explosion of reproduction has happened. No, that's not true. It is our life expectancy is improving. That means we took our death into our hands, but we are not taking the birth into our hands. We have… See, just about 50 years ago, an average time when the first child happened to a young woman in this country was somewhere around 16 or 17 years of age. It's moved to about 24 right now, but we need to push this to 35.
ఈ వీడియో గనుక మీకు నచ్చినట్లయితే
లైక్ చేయండి,
షేర్ చేయండి
అండ్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయండి.